what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
Absolutely. And tonight we are going to pull on one of those very long threads in this tapestry that has been woven over 60 years now. Each night we do one of these episodes, I run another bunch of names of researchers that have dedicated their basically decades of their lives to study and research and dig out the facts. Tonight's guest is one of those. So I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to have him with us tonight. And I'm so glad I have my co-host. So we only have both of them for a short time tonight. So rather than run my silly mouth, I'm going to get my co-host in here, and we're going to get Mr. Palamara in here. And so tonight we have my co-host, my wonderful friend, Steve Stockton, author, and so many other things. Right now, very tired daddy, Mr. Steve Stockton.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, sweetie.
Yeah,
good to see you.
Yeah,
glad
good to
have
be here.
You for as long as we can have you. Now, I don't know how much you know about our guest tonight, but he is literally the, we don't say expert specialist much on this show, do we, Steve? We give people lots of room to move, but I can honestly say he is the civilian literary specialist on this subject tonight.
Yeah, I would.
He's written just like you. He's written a couple books, and I've got a little bit of a video. I just wanted to show all the covers of his books, give him as much publicity as
I was looking at
can.
a couple of his YouTube channels there. He's got some amazing stuff.
He absolutely does. And I just wanted to make sure that all the mods have all the links I sent you guys. Throw those links up. He's got a wonderful blog link. And what are you having tonight? You staying awake?
It's an unsolicited production. It's Sturbridge Coffee House. My friends over there. This is unsolicited endorsement, but if you're in the area in southern Massachusetts near the Connecticut border, check out Sturbridge Coffee House. Since 2007.
Something dark and mean.
Yeah, there you go. They've got some amazing stuff. Check out the menu.
Absolutely. Okay, so now, just like you, Steve, he's got a plethora of books. So you know what we do here on this show. I'm just going to show them. And that way you guys can get an idea of the wonders that are in these pages. I'm telling you, he has dug up so many things that have brought to light in the JFK research over decades. And it's just, it wouldn't be the same without him. So here we go. Just a little bit. Vince, we've almost got you on, honey. I see you there, but we got to talk you up a little bit before we bring you in. So here we go. They are the rascals. Clint Hill's butt for everybody. That's the new one. Bless his heart. We can say you're specialist. You make Barnes and Noble, honey. Absolutely, that's got to be a proud moment for any author. Steve, you said you're looking forward to seeing yours down at the Piggly Wiggly, right?
Piggly Wiggly, yeah. Somebody sent me pictures of my books on the shelves at Target. That ain't bad, but once I know I
You're
hit the
shooting for
Piggly
the Piggly
Wiggly,
Wiggly.
I've
Well,
made it.
this man tonight has shot right past the Piggly Wiggly, right into the hearts of every JFK researcher out here, ladies and germs and gatekeepers of all sizes. Mr. Vince Palamara, come on in here, Vince. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. It's a pleasure to see you.
Oh, thanks a lot. It really, thanks a lot for having me on. I'm honored.
It's
Very nice
the
intro.
books. Wow. Oh, we got it. We got to do something. Anybody can send a card, So I make video. So that's the thing is you have authors on. Nobody has any idea how much they're really into this. And I think that what your body of work has really showed how much you've put into this. Now, you know how to do this, and I'm going to get out of your way. But I have to say before we get started, and I don't know, Steve, if you have something you want to say, because once you get Vince going, it's best just to back right off and just let him roll.
Yeah,
You're
I'd say
going to
we
learn a
give
lot.
Vince. Nice to meet you, sir. I say
here.
we just give him the floor and let it roll.
And now I have a couple of things. I'm going to try to throw up some pictures for you and stuff like that for the chat. Mods, you know what to do. Throw up those links for all of Vince's wonderful links. His blog. You have a great blog and so many other things. And your Amazon for the books. Unless there's another place you'd like them to go to get the books.
I would say Amazon's probably your best bet. I mean, they're available in Kindle and paperback, and that's probably the best way to go. Yeah.
The best way to go. But I want to say this, that now I've been looking into this for a long, long time. I'm by no means, I would call myself a researcher, but I've been dabbling for decades. And, we do paranormal, true crime, conspiracy here, but JFK has touched the hearts of many. I mean, I've sat down and talked to Jim Mars. I've talked to, so many throughout the years. My first love in the researchers was Penn Jones Jr.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I hooked on to. And the way his approach to the mysterious deaths and things like that, I kind of looked at what highlighted for me is if they wanted him dead, what did they want to tell us? So that's where I focus most of mine. Yours was the Secret Service, and what you have dug up on that has really changed everything, in my humble opinion, because the whole Shipman, what you dug up there, showing time, premeditation, and we have other things too, but that for sure is one, and I'm going to absolutely let you tell it. The other is to take the blame off of blaming the dead. I thought it was atrocious blaming Kennedy for certain things like the bubble top, and you know what I mean there. So thank you so much for bringing this to light, because I know it wasn't easy. You're digging, you're having to pay money out of pocket to get newspaper clippings and things like this. Folks, when you spend decades, it has to be 40 years almost for you, right? I mean,
yeah, I was 12 in 1978. Yeah. So from 1978 on, and I got real serious about it in the late 80s. But yeah,
right.
1978 on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And bringing all that to light has really changed things. And folks, you're going to see what I mean as soon as I shut up. The other thing is his gosh darn YouTube channel is a national treasure. So get in there, make sure that you see that YouTube channel, the clips that you've saved and brought to light. And I know that you say something about that in a lot of the talks that I've been so gifted to listen to have been about the last 10, 15 years stuff that's come out and proved a lot of your theories. So saying all that, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that you knew, us little guys out here are just thinking, wow,
we're all the same.
To bring that to light though, and bring it out, put it on the front porch for America to see it. I think it really has changed everything. We're getting the answers. The picture's getting clearer. And thank you for that. So please, what would you like us to know about you coming in the door?
Yeah, I just say just briefly, like how I began. I'll make a long story very short. Again, when I was 12 in 1978, and that was during the Haas Select Committee, the second major investigation into the Kennedy assassination. Same time as a 12-year-old preteen, I was into stamps and coins and whatnot. I was my big hobbies. Well, what happened was my parents, unbeknownst to me, were big fans of President Kennedy. Were also greatly touched by his death. So when I came across especially foreign stamps and coins with images of John F. Kennedy on them, they regaled me with stories about his life and how they were touched by his death. And it was going on at the same time. The nightly news is and also on PBS about the House Select Committee reinvestigation. So the two just melded together. I just became fascinated. And then something that seems a little bit odd in left field, but it's a fictional show on the 19th century Secret Service, the Wild Wild West. It's my favorite show then and still
Loved
is.
it so.
And it kind of like melded together. I started to look at the agents around President Kennedy. You know, all due respect, I'm a big fan of President Kennedy as well. But I started to like become fascinated by the men because of that darn show. And like the Zapruder film, for example, like what I noticed was like the driver, everybody like talks about the fact he slowed down the car, but I noticed that he looked back 2 times. And then again, like speeding up to 1991 in my first major presentation, I was only 25. There was a lot of seasoned authors and researchers there. And some of them said, be honest with you, Vince, that's why I thought the Secret Service, they called them secret. I never really thought twice about it. And people were amazed in the audience. I showed that really high quality Zapruder film copy of it, and I showed, again, Bill Greer, the driver, looking back not once but twice, and people in the audience were saying, boy, Vince, I'll be honest with you, I never noticed he looked back twice. I said, okay, I'm on to something. And up to this point, it was mainly just secondary sources, but from 91 on is when I really got inspired to find a lot of these former agents, and they were scattered around the country. Again, and this is before, well, the internet was technically in its infancy, but for all intents and purposes, this is really before the internet. I didn't know about the internet. So it was directory assistance, newspaper archives, microfiche, a little bit of luck and networking. And just like David Lifton's big moment was when he found the Cyber and Neil report about evidence of surgery to the head area, was his big coming out party, so to speak. For me, was a conversation I had with the number one agent in Kennedy's detail, Gerald Bain, B-E-H-N. Again, he was the number one agent in Kennedy's detail. He was there from FDR to LBJ. So I had a nice phone conversation out of the blue. I'm a stranger on the phone. Keep this in mind. And I begrudgingly believed some of the pablum because I had nothing to counter at the time. Some of the things that they threw on Kennedy, that Kennedy supposedly didn't want the bubble top. He didn't want agents on the back of the car. He didn't want the motorcycles around him and so on. Well, when I was having this conversation, Mr. Bain, I just matter of fact, I said, yeah, I was reading Death of a President, Sir, and Jim Bishop's The Day Kennedy was Shot, and even the Warren Report. And he said that President Kennedy had ordered the agents off the car, and he cut me off and goes, I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents at the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there. I immediately got caught in my mouth. I cannot believe he's telling me this is the number one agent. It's not like a buck private or something. This is a guy who was the number one agent who's telling me, in fact, he's actually pictured in that photo you're showing there too, actually, and the other one too, with the bubble top on. And I was really excited, but then after a couple of days, I came down a little bit and said to myself, you know what? I know how people think. You got to think like a defense attorney. As powerful as it was, what he said, very powerful. I think I got it on audio tape too. The gentleman passed away like 6 months later, cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was very lucid, remembered facts and details and names like you wouldn't believe. He sounded like he was 36 instead of 76. But the point being is he was still, albeit important, one guy. So I made it a quest to see if I could refute or confirm what he had to say. It was like they were reading cue cards. I contacted all these former agents across the country, and they were all telling me the same thing. Oh, President Kennedy was a very nice man. He never interfered with our actions at all. That's baloney. He never ordered us off the car. He didn't even think about things like that. Where did you read that? And I'm thinking to myself,
Love it.
oh my God, that goes against official history because the Warren report laid it out. And it's also, again, massive best-selling books like, The Day Kennedy was Shot and Jim Bishop's, that was Jim Bishop's book, The Death of a President by William Manchester. It laid this mythology and it got everybody's eye off the ball. The Secret Service said, hey, well, President Kennedy, he didn't want those men on the back of the car. He kind of had like a rendezvous with death, his favorite poem. Meantime, we all have a rendezvous with death. We're not immortal here. But what it is, it added a Shakespearean element of tragedy to his death. Just like, he was reckless with his personal life, which has been exaggerated a little bit. And then he was also reckless with his lack of interest in security. And so when I peeled away those layers, I found myself, my God. Well, then if he didn't order them off the car and they're lying, why did he throw that on Kennedy back in 63, 64? And should they have been there? And if they would have been there, would Kennedy have lived? And that's where it
snowballed from there. From there. And I find it so crazy. And I know Steve and I have sat here, he sat with me ad nauseum for probably 12 hours going over Lincoln's assassination. And so many little parallels there too. But again, they tried to blame Lincoln. Oh, he said that, if they want to get me, they're going to get me. And these kind of things that you read that Lincoln said about, I want the public to see me. Very similar to the same things. And it's almost like the same pattern book. And I find it just odd, where Lincoln actually started.
And
the Secret
Lincoln's
Service,
guard, famously
yeah,
stepped away for a drink. And,
yeah,
the night before the assassination, 9 agents, including Clint Hill and 3 others in the
yes,
fall, are 5 feet away, drank the night before, which is grounds for removal from the Secret Service. And
absolutely.
again, I always tell people, this is before Woodward and Bernstein, real true investigative journalism. Back in 63, 64, people believed the government's like the word of God. And there was no internet. There was none of the like intrusive, which is good to a point, media. So people had a tendency that, well, they were powerless. What could they do to counter it anyway? So when the government's saying Lee Harvey Oswald act alone, the Secret Service did the best they could, it was kind of like, well, what can we do? It's time to move on with our lives, gentlemen, until Mark Lane that peeled away about the conspiracy.
Yes.
But largely, for decades, the Secret Service got very little short shrift or no shrift at all. It's basically they moved on to other things. Very important. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say like my take on this is more important than other people. Not at all. There's very important work to be done, about the CIA as a suspect in the assassination, Hoover's FBI, the mafia. But what I was fascinated with,
like a tapestry, like a big picture. And oddly enough, Penn Jones said it himself. I almost was floored halfway through this series. Oh my gosh. He says it in an interview. He said, I believe, like a mosaic and threads, and every thread was important and it painted a picture. And that's how I went at this, because I think that's what people do, Vince. Like you just said, they take it in groups and they think, well, if the Cubans are involved, then it couldn't be this. Yes, all of it could. And I think Jim Mars was real big on that. He would say, wasn't he? Oh, I love him. Just the same, there, on TV or on an interview or right there in front of you, same dude, But again, started 15 minutes after it. He was a young, he was in college, young cub reporter kind of thing, so he was digging in.
Club and that.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he knew a lot of the connections. So again, I take it all in, if something has been absolutely disproven as, bunk or made up by one of these societies, these 3-letter agencies to throw us off, then okay. But the rest of it I keep, because a lot of it is not, they all could be true at once. It's like the Secret Service is not going to be able to, maybe pick the building or, who owned the building and, the school book depository, the names and the coincidence and the matching up is incredible. But you've also dug into something I think is very important. And Jim DiEugenio said it in the recent Congress, whatever you want to call whatever that was.
Oh, the Luna hearing.
Yes, where he said that it's very important to understand about the Miami and the Chicago as well, because people just think this was a one and done. And I mean, Brad Metzler just came out with a book on another assassination attempt on Kennedy. Some guy with some bombs in the car or something.
Charles Pavlik.
Yeah. I had never heard of.
Pavlik,
But you're good on that. Could you touch on that a little bit? Because I think it'd be interesting for the listeners to hear it from you about how there was even patsies set up in those situations. We're kind of becoming understanding on those. Give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, well, this is my latest book, President Kennedy Should Have Survived the House. But the one before it, from last year, The Plot to Kill President Kennedy in Chicago. It's also the other traces of conspiracy. And there's a whole chapter in here that shows newspaper archives as well of prior threats and plots to President Kennedy through 61, 62, and 63. And, sometimes people have a tendency that aren't into this think, oh, it's Oswald, some crazy guy, and everything was like hunky-dory for 3 years. No. There were other threats, other plots. These newspaper articles that I, reprint in the book, and a whole chapter is just going to unbelievable how many people threatened to kill President Kennedy, made the national, and local newspapers, and how there were anti-Castro plots against Kennedy. Like in soon after the Bay of Pigs, they doubled the Secret Service protection of him down in Miami, whatnot, because they were afraid of plot to kidnap Caroline Kennedy as well as to harm President Kennedy. And off and on throughout 61, 62, 63, there was dynamite found on the way to the Orange Bowl when President Kennedy went there in December of 62, when the Bay of Pigs prisoners were released. And it was some sort of like swap with medicine and millions of dollars, whatnot, with Castro. They were there to greet Kennedy, but along the way they found dynamite and a plot to kill him, and so on and so forth. But your central point is well taken. Yes, I think this was a moving crime. It wasn't just some fluky thing where a man in a building shoots a man in a car. I think what it was there was other patsies in other cities. Famously, Chicago, November 2nd was canceled, and also November 18th, 4 days before. In fact, if anybody looks at and I detail this in my latest book and one of my other books as well, that if you look at the security for President Kennedy in Tampa 4 days before the assassination, it's a stark contrast to what did not happen in Dallas.
Yes.
Agents were on the back of the car, multi-story building rooftops were guarded. He had many motorcycles flanking the car on both sides, and they were going at a very fast rate of speed. They had a military man in the limousine. They had military and police lining the street facing the crowd. They had police, undercover detectives throughout the crowds themselves, a good conjunction with local, state police, and again, the military. And they had 6 pages of threats out to Kennedy's life in Tampa. He gets to, Dallas. We can go into what didn't happen there, but the big thing is they found a big goose egg. They found no
threats.
Even Roy Kellerman to the Warren Commission under oath said that was unusual. When I spoke to Abraham Bolden, former African-American agent of the Secret Service, he also said that that was unusual. He couldn't believe it. He said it's tantamount to former President Obama going to Mississippi and, well, there's no threats here, sir. You're all good.
Yeah.
Like, come on, give us a break. And yet
even Kennedy knew.
Yeah, Kennedy said
but even Kennedy knew. He said this. Yeah. And
we're heading to nut country.
Wasn't there a flyer passed around accusing him of treason and so many things?
And
so
in
many
the Dallas Times or Dallas Morning News with a big sarcastic welcome, Mr. Kennedy, to Dallas, and it was all these accusations of why did you do this, why didn't you do that? The John Birch Society, Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
Bottom line is this was a state that was not generally friendly to Kennedy. They barely won with LBJ's home state, as his vice president. And he was warned about Dallas. Not only did Kennedy himself, again, say we're heading to nut country, but he had people like Senator William Fulbright, his press secretary Pierre Salinger, his secretary Evelyn Lincoln, and others say avoid Dallas. Oh, Adlai Stevenson was attacked the month before. He was hit over the head with a placard and spit upon. And he said, I wouldn't go to Dallas if I was you. So there was all this. Oh, and the police chief, Jesse Curry, got on TV a few days before and warned the citizens to please, if you see anything yourselves, but make sure to let's have a good, safe welcome for the president. So there was all this foreboding. And even the night before, actually the morning, he was talking about the night before, President Kennedy said, last night would have been a hell of a night to shoot a president. Somebody could have had a pistol in a briefcase at the airport. I spoke to Marty Underwood, who was the Democratic National Committee advance man for Houston and Austin, and he worked hand in glove with the Secret Service. And he said that he told President Kennedy he was hearing rumors that something was going to happen the next day. He says, "Oh, Marty, you worry about me too much." And San Antonio Congressman Henry Gonzalez said that Kennedy said the Secret Service took care of everything, Henry. There's nothing to worry about. There's a famous article by Jim Lehrer that says Secret Service is sure all secure for Dallas. And then look what happens.
All secure. Open windows, nobody on rooftops, no military backup, the Dallas Police Department is told to stand down from what I understand.
Right.
I mean, I forget the gentleman's name. It was a police officer.
Roger Craig.
Yep. And they killed him, didn't they? Another one they killed, how many? We were standing outside with our hands in our pockets because we were told to stand down and not get involved with anything. Unusual, Vince. Unusual.
There's so much more to it than even that, because we have Roger Craig, but some people would say, okay, it's this one guy. But then Sheriff Decker, his boss, had the night before and this is all documented in my books too. It's based on the record. It's not just no theories. This is based on documents and interviews.
This is fact.
Decker offered to give about 12 additional men for security, and yet the day of the assassination doesn't help at all. There's conflicting testimony with other sheriff's deputies said, I didn't hear anything special about security. We had nothing to do with security that day. So you had this conflicting lines of the sheriff's department. Some thought that they were going to be involved in security. Others said, oh, I didn't hear anything about that. Yet there was a big article. Dallas Times Herald said that the largest police force ever for a visiting dignitary will be out when President Kennedy comes to Dallas. So there was all that, and yet there was very few police along the route in Dallas, and the few that were facing the limousine when they should have been facing the crowd. You're useless when you're a spectator yourself. You're supposed to be facing the crowd themselves, make sure there's nothing going on. Maybe look at the rooftops. But again, one of my major discoveries, in addition to finding out that President Kennedy had nothing to do with removing the agents from the car, the back of the car, another major discovery was that multi-story building rooftops were normally guarded. In fact, they were guarded during the FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy years. A lot of people assumed, and it's a good assumption, say, well, that was probably as a result of the assassination, right, Vince? They started doing it after, and I felt like, oh my God, I find newspaper articles that FDR, he comes to like New York, and there's 1,000 police on rooftops, and again, all just in the interest of time, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy. Foreign and domestic trips. All reprinted my latest 2 books in particular. And they're all in there, and you can see for yourself. You don't take my word for it. There's Nashville, Tennessee, multi-story building rooftops. When he gets to Paris, there's 10,000 police, quoting the article, were lining the rooftop. So what it was it wasn't always a police state. If someone's taking a still photo from the ground, there's oftentimes you'd say, well, security doesn't look too heavy there, Vince. But again, it wasn't a police state. We're not talking 2025 security. We're talking 61 to 63 vintage security. And there's a reason why presidents lived back then, because before the age of terrorism, when they had to worry about revolvers, and maybe, long rifles, whatnot, things like that. So in that context, the security was very good, and there's a reason why presidents survived all those years. And again, you didn't always have agents on the back of the car every trip he was on, but they had multi-story building rooftops guarded. You had many motorcycles flanking the car. You had a fast speed car. You had good protective intelligence. You had good coordination with the local, state, and federal police. So that was a way of covering for the lack of manpower, this, that, and the other. So there's a reason. Again, it wasn't just all luck. They had good planning back then for the context of the times. And again, I just want to state for the record, I'm not saying the Secret Service was involved in the assassination per se. I have 3 gentlemen that I think crossed the line, and the rest were either innocent or just following orders from above. It wasn't a question of like they're all involved, they all want them dead. It just takes 3, in my opinion, 3 men who
are they in here, Vince?
Well, one of them is Bill Greer.
One of them, Bill Greer. There he is.
Right. Yeah. Some people are suspicious of Roy Kellerman in the middle, but Kellerman stated things that went against official history. He said there have got to be more than 3 shots, gentlemen. He said the back of Kennedy's head was gone, and he couldn't understand how there was no lane for a wound from the back to the throat, things like that. And also, he's on record, through his widow. I spoke to Roy Kellerman, died in 1984, but I spoke to his widow. His wife was named June. Spoke to her a few times, actually. She said that Roy accepted that there was a conspiracy. So that's pretty amazing that somebody like that is saying that. So I think it takes a little bit of suspicion off him to an extent. But Bill Greer, what it boils down to for your audience is 3 gentlemen. Bill Greer, the driver of the limousine, if he would have obeyed common sense and training, and his superior right next to him hits the gas, Kennedy lives. First shot or shots ring got. He slows the car down. Roy Kellerman next to him says, "Get out of line. We've been hit." He grabs the radio microphone. That's when Greer turns around a second time and staring at Kennedy until a fatal headshot makes its mark. Only then does he face forward, hit the gas. Well, it turns out Bill Greer replaced a driver agent who passed away the month before. We all know, Penn Jones is famous for investigating mysterious deaths after the assassination.
Right.
Thomas Shipman was an agent who died the month before. He died October 14th, 1963 at Camp David. There he is. And I found this out by happenstance.
Incredible, Vince. This is incredible. I mean, did you pull this out of an article? Where did you get this? I know you had to dig it up out of the dust.
It was out of the blue. What it was is there's an unpublished manuscript called A Million Miles of Presidents. And what it was George McNally was a former Secret Service agent who went on to become the head of the White House Communication Agency. He was on every motorcade for Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and I think even a little into Nixon. He wrote this really dry book with no index. Well, just for your listeners, he died in 1970, but his widow came out with a book in 1982. She basically went to a Kinko's, whatnot, and printed out hundreds of them and stapled them, put them together. And Andy Winar's at the Last Hurrah Bookshop and the Collector's Archive and some other ones had it. Well, make a long story short for your listeners. What happened was in the late 1990s, I got a copy of the book. Fascinating, but boring, to be honest with you, until he gets to one part near the assassination. He goes, one of President Kennedy's drivers, Thomas Shipman, died suddenly. I'm like, what? So from that point on, I investigated and I found out through interviews of Sam Kinney, a fellow driver agent, and actually the documentary record, that Thomas Shipman died of an alleged heart attack October 14th, 1963 at Camp David. He's the only agent from the Kennedy era to die during Kennedy's days. He's the only person to die at Camp David. No one knew a thing about this. Even this little obscure manuscript, 99.999% of people, no one knew about it. Nobody in the research community never even heard of Thomas Shipman, and it took years to ferret this out. And what the shocking thing was, it was only when I paid like a couple $100, newspaperarchives.com, that I found a couple local Baltimore, Maryland newspapers covered it. Said Kennedy agent dies, Camp David. That was it. Very little. And the shocking thing was he died and he was buried 2 days later. No toxicology test. Like, there's
Nothing.
There's no country doctor saying he's not shot, he's not stabbed. It's a heart attack. And if there's no toxicology test being done, we don't know if he was drugged, it was arsenic. He just passed an annual physical. And when I did something, there's an old lawyer's adage you might have heard of, like, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. And just like these agents I spoke to, they could have told me something to rain on my parade. There'd be no books. There'd be no Vince doing the stuff. Well, at the same time, I contacted the Shipman family, lived in obscurity in Colorado area, and they didn't want money or fame or anything like that. They were obscure then, and the good people are obscure now. And I ran this by them about, I'm frankly suspicious about his death. They are too. For decades, they say he just passed the annual physical. In fact, he had to be fit and fiddle because he was a driver agent. If something happens to him behind the wheel, he's plowing down civilians. He's killing the president and other dignitaries. He just passed. He had no known heart ailments, no nothing, and boom, he falls dead at Camp David. And there's
Camp David, 5 weeks before, Vince. What is this, like 5 weeks before?
Yeah, 5
so
weeks before.
Greer has to be put in the driver's seat.
Yes.
And then you're calling. Now, I'm not going to jump on your thing, but then you're calling around. You're talking to, I believe, Greer's son.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure out what's going on with Greer. And is it possible? Why did he turn around and look twice? Now, again, Vince and I and Steve and I have talked about this before, too. Please. He did not turn around and shoot Kennedy in the head.
Yeah,
Grease on the hair.
That's
Both
stupid.
hands are on the steering wheel.
Yeah,
I have a
didn't
theory about that one. We know how these three-letter agencies love to throw in misadventure.
Yes.
You were on an interview not long ago saying, I don't know where that came from. I have an idea. It was absolutely from Bill Cooper. And I think it was one of these things where where they gave him a doctored piece of tape so he would stumble on himself. That was the time where he was really getting some bad information. And do you know what I mean? There was a lot going on with Bill Cooper behind the scenes.
What happened was Bill Cooper and Lars Hansen really propagated this. And to be fair, there was a manuscript called Murder from Within, Fred Newcomb and Perry Adams, who did some good work other than the theory that Greer shot Kennedy, which he didn't. In poor quality copies of the Zapruder film, along with a high dose of power suggestion, Roy Kellerman's forehead, Brill cream, popular in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, with the light shining on it. Hey, it's a pistol, and Greer turned around and shot him. Hey, it's a sexy, short answer. For people out there who aren't researchers, I get that's the number one thing I get is, I heard a driver shot Kennedy, because it ties it off for them. Hey, it's solved for me. It's a driver. But the thing is,
it's a perfect deflection as well. And we know there's plenty of that going on in here.
Well, here's one thing to lead to what you said before about his son. Well, just like Roy Kellerman died in 1984, before I could really get going interviewing these agents, I spoke to most of the Kennedy detail. Well, and I did speak to June Kellerman, his widow. Well, William Greer died the next year in 1985. Nothing suspicious, natural causes, so to speak. But I spoke to his son. He only had one child, son Richard. And he was a nice enough gentleman. Again, I'm a stranger on the phone. I can't stress this enough. They could have hung up on me and said, I don't take telemarketers. I don't talk to strangers. But they were pretty cooperative for the most part, these people. But anyway, I asked him in the middle of this conversation, because he's answering other things. I said, well, what did your father think of President Kennedy? The line almost like went dead.
Yeah.
This is awkward. So I went back to other things and started talking about the trip to Europe and that. And I got back. Sir, if you don't mind, what did your father think of President Kennedy? And he said, well, we're Methodists and JFK was Catholic.
Yep.
Like, okay. And it wasn't until now that obviously leads to a lot of suspicion. This is before the Thomas Shipman information, keep in mind. And then it wasn't until 2013, the Irish Times in Ireland, the newspaper in Ireland, contacted me and said, Vincent, we have a copy of your new book. I'm going to give you some information of a native son of ours, William Greer. Did you know that he was a member of the Orange Order, the Order of the Orange? There you go. You have it.
There it is right there. Yep.
And
I found that incredible. And I mean, it's only 15 years. He came over in 29.
Yeah.
It's only 15 years. I mean, think about it.
And again,
He's not that far removed from his homeland, is what I'm saying, and
exactly.
the feelings of it.
And you
Right.
got to keep in mind something else. Not only that, but Bill Greer, during his Warren Commission testimony, said he was a chauffeur in Boston for a while. He was even worked on the estate of Henry Cabot Lodge, who was a political enemy of Kennedy's twice, Richard Nixon's vice presidential candidate, and also a senator from Boston. But also, you know, if Greer is working in Boston and whatnot, he had to have heard all the scuttlebutt about Joe Kennedy Sr.'s alleged bootlegging, sympathizing with the Nazis, et cetera, et cetera. So you had that kind of milieu there. And then you have this Orange Order, and you have, again, decades later, albeit, but a stranger on the phone. Why didn't he say it's, oh, yeah, President Kennedy loved him, and he loved President Kennedy?
It had to be strong.
Quiet. He goes, well, we're Methodists and JFK is Catholic. And that looms large when you realize Greer's in place of Shipman, first shot rings out. In fact, even people like Gerald Posner and Vincent Bugliosi said the success of the assassination was due to Greer. Now, they believe Oswald acted alone, but still, the point being is, if it's literally, if Greer does evasive driving and or hits the gas, Kennedy lives. And now he's one of my three suspects. The other two are Emory Roberts, who was the shift leader in the fob car directly behind, the commander of the other 8 agents in the car, and also Floyd Boring, who was the planner of the Texas trip. There you go. We'll talk about Emory Roberts right there. He died in 1973. He was a young man. He was only in his early 50s. And the thing about him was he's the only, Getty hit this now, he's the only active agent who also worked for a presidential administration, LBJ's. He was appointment secretary.
He went right over.
He basically replaced Dave Powers and sat at his desk while still being an active agent up to including the Nixon days.
Yeah.
What happened was and again, I have this reprinted in my books. The press was wondering, George Reedy, LBJ's press secretary, was wondering, why is the Secret Service agent greeting the Prime Minister of Japan? What's he doing things like that? And it turned out he was LBJ's appointment secretary. In fact, he was so infamous that when LBJ said farewell to the Secret Service near the end of his term, he called it Emory Roberts by name and said, oh, Emory Roberts couldn't be here tonight. He says goodbye to me every night and greets me every morning. It's
I could
wow.
vomit.
You consider that when the shooting begins.
I could just throw up. I just could.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is. It is. And then he ordered the agents not to move. In fact, back up a little bit. At Love Field, when the motorcade
I've got the clip if you want to narrate. I've got the clip off of your YouTube. If you want to do, Steve, I wanted to ask you. You and I were talking while I'm looking for this clip. I want before we let Vince go off of this little part, we were talking about how the bubble top was really kind of a deterrent as well. It really wasn't bulletproof. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? It was actually, I forget exactly what we were talking about, Steve, as far as that goes, but it was more like a visual deterrent rather than basically a lie.
Yeah.
But go ahead. In so many words, a lot of people thought it was bulletproof, but it wasn't. Correct?
Wasn't.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, now, while it wasn't, several agents I spoke to said it was a deterrent. It was used on there. And the thing is, it was a psychological deterrent, number one, because most people assumed it was bulletproof. When a potential assassin or assassins even fired in the car with it on, and people like Winston Lawson even conceded it would deflect the bullet. Many of them said it would deflect the bullet. And also, it would shield the assassin's view via the sun's glare. You still had the metal strips. Anything would have helped deflect the bullet, let alone up. And again, when an assassin would have shot, because up till like the 70s, most people assumed that was bulletproof. So again, and you also factor in this. You alluded to this earlier when this show began about how, hey, Vince, you were saying about the last 5 to 15 years, these photo and film discoveries. Yeah. Well, it turns out that President Kennedy used the bubble top in between a third and a half of all his motorcades, often in very good weather. There's this myth that he hated the bubble top and he only used it when it was pouring rain. No. He used it many times when it was bright, sunshiny day. Even with agents on the back of a car, he used it. He's smiling ear to ear, but there's this mythology. He didn't want the bubble top that day and he hated the bubble top. Not true at all. Again, he used it on many trips. So
true. And I think, again, like in the beginning when I said that a lot of this, if somebody may have pulled it up later on down the line, we'll never know. But because, your section of this tapestry, you dug in so deep, you've pulled on those threads, and now they're in there. They're right there. They're in the light of day, and we can see it. And I think it's wonderful. And you also had a little something to bring in this to light too. Now, do you want to narrate? I've cut the sound on this,
sure,
so you can talk over it.
I
Please
discovered
do.
this in 1991. It was from WFAA ABC affiliate on VHS tapes. I paid a couple $100 in 1991. And
Incredible.
14 hours of footage. A lot of it's boring, but I got the shock of my life at this clip here. I literally discovered this, popularized it. It
There
was
you
on,
are.
this is from a coup and Camelot. I also showed it in the Men Who Go Kennedy and conferences. That's Don Lawton, Agent Don Lawton. He raises his hand 3 times to discuss what happened. Is Emory Roberts had already stood up and basically motioned him back, and 3 times, he gives like the universal sign for what gives.
Like, what the heck, man?
Yeah,
and that's Emory. That's Emory standing
Emory
up there,
who stood
isn't
in
it?
the fob car and called him back. Yeah, exactly. And Don Lawton, when I spoke to him in 1995, the sad thing is I didn't know in 1995 he was the agent, but the good news is he told me, you always have regrets. Who knows if they only would have had agents on the back of the car. So he didn't blame Kennedy. He said, if only they would have back car. Here he is on the back of the car 4 days before in Tampa. And he also rode on the back of the car on the prior Chicago trip, March 23rd, 1963. Now, he passed away, I think the year was 2012. Well, there was an article the next year for the 50th anniversary, and a lady friend of his who was in military intelligence did a little article. I think it was Iowa News. It was a real short little article. No one knows but somebody like me who Googled and found it. It's in my books. Says that Don told her, I should have been there. I should have been on the back of the car. And he talked about the prior trip. So Don was always regretted not being in the back of the car. Again, you remember what he said to me, that if only they had left guys in the back of the car. Well, Paul Landis, fellow agent, came out of the best-selling book, Final Witness, from the fall of 2023. And he says in the book that he found the official excuse for why Don Lawton wasn't riding in the car and that to not be believable. And we had plenty of coverage at the airport. He was needed on the motorcade, and he would love to see Winston Lawson's original notes. So here's Paul Landis, as late as 2023, basically agreeing with me that there's something to this. And again, when I showed that conferences throughout the 90s and onward and on TV, everyone says, wow, Vince, where the hell did you get this? Because for years, I mean, I literally didn't film it. It was from WFA,
Right.
but I discovered it. And it was one of those things that I popularized through the years. And again, people said, like, this is amazing. He's 3 times. It's one thing he did it one time. He did it 3 times. He stands there.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is Paul Landis, an agent, jumps back into the fob car to give him room on the running board. In fact, Paul Landis doesn't get back to the running board for a couple blocks because he was leaving room for Don Lawton. And not to confuse your viewers and listeners, there was actually another agent recalled at Love Field as well. He only appears in the newsreels right before the WFAA black and white video begins. He was recalled before Henry Ribga. And for a while, I conflated the two, not realizing there was 2 different agents. Henry Ribga, in his report, even admits jogging with the limousine. Well, I can't prove it in a court of law, but obviously it must have been Emory Roberts pulled him back. And then, because there's film of the 2 together, that's left Don Lawton by himself. And that's when Emory Roberts rises in the seat, gets all the way, stands up in the seat, and goes like this. And
Right.
that's Don Lawton goes, I guess, 3 times. And when you factor in, now getting to Love Field, getting to Elm Street, I should say, not Love Field, Elm Street, when the assassination began. When I interviewed Sam Kinney, the driver of the fob car, I interviewed him 3 times at length, real nice guy. He basically confirmed something I thought was an overstatement. There's a line in Harry Livingstone and Robert Groden's book, High Treason, where it says, Emory Roberts ordered the agents not to move. And I was like, oh, where did you get that? That's explosive. It's true, but there's no footnotes. Where did you get this at? So I ran it by Sam Kinney, be honest, expecting him to shoot it down and say there's nothing to that. Because that's exactly right. That's what Emory did. He ordered him not to move. So what do you mean exactly right? And he goes, well, I thought maybe, Jack Reddy or I could have ran them over. And, he probably was looking out for their interest. And when I spoke to other agents, they said, no. Agents only care about cover and evacuate. They don't care about their own safety. They're there to protect. Cover and evacuate is the creed of the protectee, in this case, President Kennedy. And for Emory Roberts to withdraw 2 agents at Love Field and to order the agents not to move as the shooting begins, and then he grabs the radio microphone.
It's the most incredible thing.
Yeah, and then you can also see him on the radio microphone right after they get under the underpass. There's a famous Mel McIntyre photo where it almost looks like the car is still, but it's just going real slow. And the agents who are still in the fob car conversing, and Emory Roberts begins with a radio microphone. And when he gets to Parkland, Emory Roberts usurps his authority over Roy Kellerman. Roy Kellerman is his boss. and he's just the shift leader. And he tells Roy Kellerman, "You stay with Kennedy. I'm going to Johnson." And that's when he commandeers LBJ, the Air Force One, and the rest is history. He becomes appointment secretary. So it's grist for the mill for people to think that there's something to this. And just in the interest of time, I have one more suspect. Again, all it takes is 3 people following orders. Everybody else.
So correct.
Floyd Boring, it turned out he was the planner of the Texas trip from the Secret Service point of view. Now, he wasn't actually there. He was on the Florida trip before. Turns out, and this is confirmed by Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine's book, Kennedy Detail, Mrs. Kennedy and Me, that Gerald Bain, the #1 agent in the White House Detail I spoke to, I mentioned earlier, he took his first full vacation during the entire Kennedy administration, the week of the assassination. Okay, this is bizarre. He's not there, so Floyd Boring's handling things. It turns out, this might be a little convoluted for your audience, but in oral histories to the Truman Library and the JFK Library, he admitted he did all the advanced planning for Kennedy's many trips, all throughout the world, foreign and domestic. So he's taking that on himself. He did that, and he was the planner of the Texas trip. He gave Win-Lawson the assignment of being the lead advanced agent for Dallas. David Grant was his assistant. And also, Floyd Boring is very suspicious for one major thing he did. Clint Hill admitted under oath that he was told by Floyd Boring not to ride on the back of the car. And this happened between November 19th and November 21st. Floyd Boring instructed me, and I think he instructed the other agents. Well, when I spoke to Floyd Boring, I spoke to him twice, also got a letter from him. He said, "President Kennedy never ordered us off the car. That's not true. Where'd you read that?" I'm thinking, oh my God, sir. Thinking to myself, you're the one who went around telling everybody, including Clint Hill famously, to not ride in the back of the car, and you're joining your colleagues saying there's no truth to this. You know how sinister that looks, that he went and took, and this is before the assassination, a few days before, don't ride in the back of the car. The president doesn't want you there. And he's telling me it's not true, and I already know it's not true because, again, this took years to ferret out. That's the tragedy. Little old amateur me in the wilderness. It took years for these films and photos to become available.
Yes.
To become public domain because there was copyright laws for years. Things are on Pinterest now. Things are so above board on Facebook and yada, yada, yada. But what happened was when I got a hold of the vast majority of the Tampa, Florida motorcade, I said, well, where's he ordering them off the car? Because the agents are on the back of the car. When I started to speak to the agents of the police that were on the motorcade, they told me, oh, no, the agents were on the back of the car for the entire 28-mile motorcade, which was 3 times longer in Dallas, by the way. They're going at a fast rate of speed, hanging on the back of the car. They had no trouble there, but Dallas is only 1/3 the length of Tampa, and they're not on the back of the car by edict of the president, which we know is not true. And you tug on that string, you realize there's more to it. Again, buildings weren't guarded. Motorcycles weren't by the car in Dallas. They blamed that on Kennedy. No truth to that at all. They blamed the lack of the bubble top on Kennedy. Sam Kinney, the driver of the fog car I mentioned, was solely responsible for the bubble top's removal. He was adamant to it. We went over this over and over again. No wiggle room. Kenny O'Donnell had nothing to do it. JFK had nothing to do it. It was his, at that time, it was the early 90s, 30-year regret. Did I make the right decision? Now, you might say, well, that doesn't look suspicious. He didn't have the bubble top. Fair enough. But then when you realize that they put this blame on him for years, he didn't want that bubble top on the car. Again, they created this thing, blame the victim. He had a rendezvous with death. He was reckless with his social life. He was reckless with security. But what it did, it got everybody's eyes off the ball. And again, I'm not trying to say all these men are guilty. I'm just saying there was a few of them. And that's why the name of my latest book is President Kennedy Should Have Survived Dallas, because it's not Monday morning quarterbacking. Using the techniques they just had before.
Just protocol. Just protocol. And you proved over the decades of pulling all this out. Now it's been, like a time, like you said, things becoming available. At first you went at it, in kind of a primal tribal kind of way. You had to go to the microfiche, you had to do the Dewey Decimal System, you had to go looking through the research stuff and read the books like we all did. Same with Steve and I, the paranormal true crime and the conspiracies. That's what we do. And, it's the same technique. You have to go in there, you have to dig, you have to be dedicated. But your story is a little different, where all of these things are peeling back, much like Robert Groden and even Penn Mars over the years. Everybody had something that they did. Like Penn Mars went down to Dealey every year until, the 6th floor museum just decided, look, we got to do something to counteract this. Everybody has Jones, Jim Mars, Penn Jones. Yeah, I'm sorry, I mixed them up. And then you've got Groden sitting down there. You're getting oh my gosh, yeah. And I mean, from the beginning to end, 84 indictments against him for, for silly things, just to shut him up. for
Well, it's
telling
the
the
same thing
truth.
happened to me. I was threatened at work twice. That's why it's a current event in some respect. My previous job, 2 times I got called in from the human resources section. They said that Vince, you in a secure room. I'm thinking, oh, must be getting fired for something. What the heck did I do? I said, yes, I am. Why? I got caught my thinking this is then. What did I do? And he said, well, we got a letter from an associate of a former Secret Service agent, Gerald Blaine, who's the author of the Kennedy Detail.
Mm-hmm.
And they want us to terminate you for your unpatriotic writings about the Secret Service and about him. They called me in there twice. He said, just let you know, First Amendment rights. They started laughing on the phone. Your job's secure. Just to let you know, the CEO never sees these letters. They're screened. The point being, if there's nothing to this, why are they doing that? And I put this out of context for your listeners to give context to it. It was Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine, not to be confused with Gerald Blaine, the head of the White House Detail. Gerald Blaine, B-L-A-I-N-E.
Here's a shot of Clint Hill, everybody, in case you want to see what he looks like.
Yeah, these were agents who were fly fishing in Colorado. They were friends for decades. They served the Denver field office and later the White House Detail. But the bottom line, they were retired. And I sent it. I was bold enough in the year 2005, 20 years ago, to send a 22-page letter to Clint Hill. This was the time we had unlisted address.
You go. I love it.
So basically, no one had. I got it through another agent, Lynn Meredith, who shockingly gave me his unlisted phone number and addresses. Right to Clint Hill, Vince. You're very well versed in this. To be honest with you, I wasn't there in Dallas. So I can't give you finite answers on this. Right to Clint Hill, and I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. It's like the Holy Grail. I got his address. Well, anyway. I sent this 22-page letter. This is before my first book came out. It was like a Cliff Notes version of my first book. And he was angry. And he was like, denied. I don't want to talk about this or nothing. Well, what happened was Gerald Blaine came out. It's a private letter just to Clint Hill. I got his return receipt requested. Well, Gerald Blaine starts quoting from the letter a couple of days later when I was talking to him. He goes, don't be so hard on Emory Roberts. I'm like, oh, my God, he shared the letter with him. So I thought that's the end of it. Then all of a sudden I'm reading the trade papers, and then Simon and Schuster is going to publish Gerald Blaine. He said nobody
had heard of him.
And he never published before. And then the biggest book company in the world. Then all of a sudden I get a letter from his attorney telling me to take down my blog. And he mentioned a Gerald Blaine. I'm like, okay. And then they mentioned me on C-SPAN, not once, but twice, again, before my first book published. Out of nowhere, they start talking about me, showing a video of me on YouTube, going on and on about Vince Palamara from Pittsburgh, PA, this young man, this researcher. I'm like, what the hell? Not once, but twice. And they said that you are not going to be, his attorney said, you're not going to be mentioned in any way in his book. Yet I get to his book, page 359 to 360. I'm a self-described Secret Service expert. They just don't name me for legal reasons, whatnot. In the book is nothing but a blame the victim thing. When Gerald Blaine's on record in 2004 telling me joining the course, Kennedy had nothing to do with agents being on the back of the car. That was all a lie. He had nothing to do with that. He never interfered with actions at all. But I think he realized after he saw that 22-page letter to Clint Hill, freaked them both out. He started writing his book in 2005. Something else happened in 2005. Clint Hill admitted this on C-SPAN. He burned all his notes in 2005. Yes, okay, so he was born, in 1932. Okay, he served in the Secret Service from 1958 until 1975. And all his years of retirement, he burns his notes the same year that I contacted him. Was it because there's something in the notes was going to go against or confirm, I should say, what I had to espouse? And then again, their whole things in their books, especially Gerald Blaine's first one, is to blame the victim. It makes it sound like, Kennedy, it was Oswald acting alone, and Kennedy helped him by not wanting security around the car. And you realize it's a total lie what he's doing. But what it does, it's created so much damage to the historical record because people that aren't researchers pick up his book and go, boy, Martha, Kennedy didn't want agents on the back of the car. He didn't want the bubble top. He didn't want the motorcycles by the car. This man had a rendezvous with death. See, that's what I'm going against. And
it's so frustrating. And your frustration is the same as Jim Mars when I'm talking to Jim Mars. And he was mad. The last I got to talk to him was right before King dropped 11/22/63. And he said, it's not so much, I'm glad that they're keeping the narrative of at least, the Kennedy murder in Dealey Plaza alive. But now all the young kids that see this are just going to think Oswald did it alone. Because again, it just reinforces that. So you feel the same. And Steve, I know I got to get you out of here, honey. Is there anything you want to say to Vince before I let you both go? I promise.
It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to read the books. It was a pleasure meeting you, sir.
Same here.
So much.
Good night, everybody.
I love you.
Love,
good night,
peace, and chicken wrist. I've been up since 3:30 with the baby.
I know. Go get. I'm telling you, a little whiskey on the gums, honey. Good night. Don't kill me, Nick. Good night.
He's
sweetheart.
teething. All right. Good night.
Take care.
He's a new papa, and they're
Oh.
trying to. And the baby's. It's just 9 months old. And he's going through teething. So I said, I told you
Oh.
would have forgot what it was like. He hasn't none of them getting any sleep. But
No
thank you
problem.
so much. Before I let you go, I want you to tell. I found this part so endearing because it's so telling of Clint Hill. I think everybody kind of feels bad for him because he did break the order to stand down by he did
boring.
jump on the back of the car.
was
I
too late, but he
personally think he loved Jackie. I mean, it's obvious in his
Oh,
words
yes.
and everything else.
I think they might have even had an affair, to be honest.
It's possible, and it's really possible to touch on that. But again, who could blame her? I mean, JFK's in the pool banging 2 interns. God knows what. She sees the feet prints. I mean, she wasn't stupid. They were just. It was the way the Kennedys were, guys. It's a whole nother episode. But here's the thing. I thought it was really cool, and I believe it was you that said how they probably got together and how they really created that kind of special relationship. Let's just say it's that because they're both smokers. And when you're standing outside and you're smoking, tell a little bit about that, because I think that really tells a little bit more about Hill. And, don't take his book word for word. There's going to be a lot of flowery stuff in there towards Jackie, and who wouldn't, because she was like a walking angel. She really was. She put up with a lot of crap, and everybody feels sorry for her.
Yeah,
but
well,
this is what happened. Go ahead.
In defense of Clint Hill, his book's a heck of a lot more truthful than Gerald Blaine's The Kennedy Detail. Gerald Blaine's Kennedy Detail, thumbs down, a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies, and we didn't go in time. You can read my books to see all the lies. Clint Hill's books, other than a few pages on the assassination, his books are very good. To answer your question directly about Jackie and him, yeah, they were both smokers, heavy smokers. And what happened was on trips and whatnot, Clint Hill would get in the back seat with Jackie, and they'd share a cigarette together and talk and whatnot. And they became close because, the president was a leader of the free world, commander in chief. He had a lot on his mind. Now we know in hindsight, he was also doing things on the side with interns, this, that, and the other. But irrespective of that, he's still, he's busy and whatnot. And Jackie had a companion. And, even though Clint Hill was married with kids, well, she was married with kids as well.
Right.
They shared a bond, and many people think that it might have been something more to it than just met the eye. But it's very least, he was infatuated. And, what happened. He was one of the agents that drank the night before. It was grounds for removal of the service. He got to the car, albeit when it was late. To be brutally honest, when the assassination began, the shots rang out. If you look at the Marie Muchmore film and whatnot, he actually gets the car when the shooting's all over, and Jackie gets in and out of the back of the car of her own volition. They never actually touch. But because the sentiment's there, he tried to do something. He tried to cover.
Right.
Especially if people believe Oswald alone. He really got there super late. It was all over and done with. But even for people who believe it's a conspiracy, which I do, me
too.
You could say to yourself, well, he at least was noble. He tried to do something, albeit it was late. And again, if you factor in the fact he was drinking the night before. But yeah, I think him and Jackie had a special bond. And I think the fact he was away from his wife all the time, his wife was named Gwen, and he had 2 kids. And I think that he was away and he was tempted and whatnot. I don't know if anything ever crossed the line between them two, but it definitely shows that he had a special feeling for her, and it might have been a little infatuation. And I wouldn't rule out the fact that something might have happened. They went to Greece together. They went to places without the president. You never know. She got wind of Jack's, philandering and whatnot, and there definitely could have been something there. Who knows? Yeah. And again, I can't stress this enough. I think 95 to 99% of these agents were squeaky clean. It just took a few bad apples. The rest of them following them, following orders, and it left Kennedy a sitting duck. Now, in hindsight, was that gross negligence, or was that to set him up for the assassination? I kind of go between the two. It depends on my mood, basically. There's something I look at and go, it's so obvious he was set up. Then there's another time I said, well, maybe it was just gross negligence. They covered up because they didn't want to, and they covered up by blaming Kennedy. See, if Kennedy's to blame for the lack of a bubble top, agents not being in the back of the car and the motorcycles not being beside the car, well, then all eyes are off the Secret Service. Hey, Kennedy didn't want that done. See what I mean? So that mythology protected them. It was like a glove for years until it was wiped away. But
you and I both know, and by your research and your wonderful books and everything, and the amount of interviews and documentaries that you've been on, it really does start bringing it to the surface where it's a little bit more common knowledge now to know that, all right, well, they did blame, because we brought it up here. They did it in the Lincoln conspiracy. They blamed Lincoln. Well, he wanted to be out in the open. He wanted to be riding around with Mary in the carriage. He wanted to do these things. So again, it's the same type of thing, but it's when you look at all of it and you back up to that 40,000 foot view and you go, okay, it was changed just a couple of days, the route. They didn't have to go down Elm. This
Jerry
is definitely
Bain
a crossfire. Absolutely. This definitely a crossfire. I'm ex-military, so I understand about compartmentalization. You don't have to have the entire Dallas Police Department in on it. You just have to have the one telling everybody to go stand outside. That's
exactly. Just like with the Secret Service. Now, Jerry Bain, the head of the White House detail, one of the other explosive things he told me was the motorcade route was changed for Dallas. He said, I forgot why. I don't know why, but I know the route was changed.
Yeah.
Right there, the smoking gun that was changed. This is the number one agent of the White House detail. Wasn't this some guy in a backwater field office? The number one agent who was involved in the planning of the Texas trip. He just wasn't physically there. And for him to tell me that speaks volumes. It came up in the context of the Haas Select Committee. To this day, even his executive session testimony is yet to be released. Only his staff interview was released. And he's one of a couple agents where to this day, it's still buried somewhere. But I said, what did they ask you? They asked me about the trip before. Then he asked me why the motorcade route was changed for Dallas. And that's when he brought it. I know it was changed, but why? I've forgotten completely. But let's everybody focus on the fact he's confirming it was changed.
It was changed. That last little bit. And there's a little thing in, I know that we're real quick, if you talk to some researchers and, our friend, like you sit down with Grobert and try to talk about Kilgallen, for the love of God. You can't do it. He'll peel the wallpaper off the walls when you're sitting with Mark Grobert, and you mentioned Dorothy Kilgallen. The furniture gets up and moves away from Mark. That's how mad he gets. So, but me, I take everything in and I said, well, I've sat down with Mark Shaw and I talked to him for hours, and I know that he worked with Bella. I know he has some insight. So if he got some things wrong, that doesn't throw away all the facts that are still present once you peel all that back. And that's what we do. We just try to peel back to get to the facts. And what's left is this tapestry, this mosaic, as Penn Jones called it. And it really is a picture. I think the picture is becoming clear because people like you have hung in there and stuck to your guns, and you just want the facts. You're that type of person that just like also Mark Lane.
For a living. I'm not in this for money. I work for a living, full-time, married. I have other interests.
Right. And you're a wonderful guitar player, by the way, guys. You go to his and your wife plays wonderful keys. It sounds wonderful together. I love the music. It's so pretty. But so and that's it. We do have other things going on in our lives and stuff like that. But we stop for a moment.
You know what it is? It's all the low nutters who are making the money. The Posners, the Bugliosi. William Manchester, Jim Bishop, they're the ones making millions
because they're promoting.
Like us are just like
hacking it out of the wilderness. Hacking it out of the wilderness
for a living.
Right. And that's why I said I'm doing this series and I'm going to do it till it's finished, and I keep telling my listeners, I said, you don't understand. Oswald is one of the most complex 24-year-olds you ever want to meet in your life. If you don't believe that all of this stuff was in motion, Vince has proved again tonight. This is a whole nother aspect of this thing was in motion long before the 22nd, by digging up Shipman. This was 5 weeks before. They're already planted. There it is right there. The plot, Chicago, Miami. So many things. And each one had a patsy, guys. I personally believe there was more than one in Dallas. They just didn't need them, and this is just the pattern that goes to work. Once you accept that these are the way things go, you're not so focused on what one did and the other. They did what they had to do. They kept their mouths shut because they were scared not to, or they were killed. And that's why Penn and Mark Lane focused so much on the witnesses. And then they spoke to Mark Lane, and 3 months later, most of them were gone. This kind of thing. So there's so many people in this. It's not just one person being shot at 12:30 in the afternoon in Dallas on, in front of God and everybody. It's everybody that came after that. And it is Oswald, because I don't believe he fired a shot. That's just my theory.
I agree.
I don't believe
think
he fired a shot.
Down in the lunchroom, and here's my take on it with my last. You
got to go. I know you got to go.
Just real quick. Tell you real quick. This book. Yeah, I say that Oswald's rifle was one of the rifles used, but he didn't fire it. They did that to set him up. Of course, it's going to show the ballistics are going to tie some of the bullets to it because they used the gun, but it couldn't have been taken apart and put back together because it couldn't have been sighted in. It would have been worthless. Had it already been put together, someone else used it, And it threw all the blame on him for ballistics because they ignored the grass, anywhere else shots were coming from.
Absolutely.
So obviously it's going to trace to him, but I don't think he was taken down and broken apart, put together with a dime or a screwdriver.
Oh, that's so silly.
It could have been.
And his DD-214. I don't know if you're following this Manning guy, but he's been at it for a while. He's just popping out now, and he just sits in the couch and tells things. He's got a story of how he found a DD-214 stuffed in that's your military. I'm sure you know what that is, but stuck. Now this is Oswald's original, stuck in the file where they're keeping officers. Now, if you've ever been in the military, whatever, they keep everything officer away from non-coms, and they're just down there as guards working in this building, reading files to keep busy in the night shift. And he finds this one file he thinks is empty, and it's just Oswald's DD-214. Shows that he was barely a marksman. Now, when you're in there and you're taking, you're trying to qualify, they just want to get you through. There's a lot of marksmen who never made marksmen. They just got marked and pushed through. Yeah. Right.
Like Nelson Delgado and other of his Marines, he was terrible.
Terrible. Maggie's drawers.
Yeah.
Maggie's drawers all day long. Maggie's drawers, which means you're missing the bullseye, guys. There's a red flag goes up. Believe me, I saw the red flag, not on my shoot, but plenty going around. I'm probably a better shot than Oswald ever was. But the thing is I think he knew he was something going on. That he knew there was something going down that day.
He was 100% innocent.
Oh God, no. And they find $50 on him, and then we've got the 3 wallets, the 2 jackets and everything else. And I won't even get into the Armstrong stuff. Oh my God. You want to talk about research.
Be here for days.
Oh my God, for days. But see, that's the thing though. Look, 35 years of research, it's worth looking into. And, I wouldn't just throw it out because again, it's incredible. The work he's done.
I presented with him twice in the 90s. He's a great guy.
Is it incredible? And so you just look at all these things. Like I said, don't be so quick to throw them out. Look at everything. But I think Vince's work on the Secret Service really gives you the heart. They're the closest people to the president, the detail. And it's also the most heartbreaking, Vince. And I'll let you out on this because I promised I wouldn't keep him long tonight.
It's okay.
He has a real job.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's the heart too, because here's the trust. It's the betrayal. It's the Caesar. It's the Lincoln. It's that betrayal of when he goes and puts his hands to his throat. It's almost like he's looking at Greer. He's looking ahead like, help me. And no help comes. In fact, the ones that he's looking for protection are the ones that have betrayed him. And this makes me so sick to my stomach. And it echoed out, Vince. It's like dropping a pebble in a pond. It echoed out, and a whole country is betrayed. And then
all
the world.
Presidents that
so there we are.
President, if it wasn't for him being assassinated, the Vietnam War, Watergate,
58,000 plus. The whole civil rights thing, I think everybody got betrayed there too, because LBJ, we all know the things. You and I could be here forever. So here's the thing. Open invitation. Anytime you want to come on and talk about this, you come see Cisco and we'll just jammer on and have a blast. I want to promote every book that you've done. I think they're wonderful. I'd love to promote, you come on, we can play a song that you've got out there. I think it's beautiful. Everybody here would love that music. So get over there, subscribe to Vince's YouTube channel. There is a plethora of rare interviews, rare clips,
1,300 videos.
Oh my gosh, so much. It's a national treasure. And get over there and look at the blog too. And I thank you so much for taking so much time with us, Vince. And thank your kind wife for the time away from family, and to your dad as well. So thank you again, and please feel free to come back. I hope you enjoyed your time here.
Sounds good. I did very much so.
And it's just been wonderful. Thank you for having such a kind heart and so much intelligence, and put forth on such a good cause. Thank you.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Have a pleasant evening.
Same to you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye-bye.
All right. We're going to let Vince out of here. Now, guys, I knew I was going to have to let both my bows go tonight early. Thank you guys for playing so nice over in the chat. I appreciate it. Mods, thank you so much. I didn't get to say hi to everybody. I see Lisa and Val and Kat. Thank you to all my mods. I know Henry's here, and I'm pretty sure I saw Ted. Listen, all of my wonderful followers on Facebook, over on the Journey Through the Gate Facebook group, on my Rumble, and over here on YouTube. I appreciate you all. Tonight I can see the YouTube. It looks like we're still playing over there. I was afraid we might get shut down doing what we're talking about. They've been really doing me a woo. It's like I've been buried alive on YouTube, right? But my hand is still sticking out. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm hanging in. But thanks for your patience over there on YouTube. I appreciate it. Thank you to everybody on Rumble. Now, I knew I was going to have to let them go. I wanted to touch on a couple of things. God bless the Stocktons and everything they're going through over there. Little Holden is teething. And anybody that's ever been a mom or a dad, or I don't think you can be both at the same time. Yeah, you can. My mom was mom and dad at the same time. But either way, you know what I'm talking about. And they haven't had a lot of sleep. So we're just going to take the reins. But thank you to Vince Palamara for coming on. I think he's wonderful. I love his work. Anybody that dedicates that many decades, for this research and just the facts. And I love people with character. And when they put something out and say, hey, I got this wrong, I want to fix it. Love that. I try to do it here. I don't always catch all my mistakes, but if I do, I try to come back and fix it because I'm sure believe me, more than I catch. But it's, not on purpose. I'm not coming in clickbaiting you. I'm not trying to lie to you. I have nothing to gain other than just your trust and me trusting you guys. When you come back and you give me information, we look it up and we figure it out. That's what we're here to do, help each other. So I have a couple of things in the kitty I wanted to tell you. So I wasn't sure how we were going to go about it because, like, as you can tell with Vince, there's so much information and there's so many dates off the top of his head. It's amazing. It's like a machine. And if you have no knowledge of the structure of how the Secret Service was set that day and who was in charge that wasn't there, it can be a little confusing. So I'm going to just go over a couple of those things. So you have James Rowley. Now, he was the Secret Service. He was at the chief location in Washington, D.C. His role as chief of the Secret Service, Rowley was the top official overseeing all operations, but was not present in Dallas. Bain, this is the one of the ones that Vince was talking so much about. This is Gerald Bain. He was special agent in charge, White House detail location. He was on actual leave. Now, he went on leave a week before the Dallas. And that kind of brings up a lot of controversy too, because the people think, oh, he wasn't involved. He was involved. He wasn't. It goes back and forth. You be the judge of that. If you want to believe that, they went over his head and he had no knowledge of this, it doesn't really change much. And I think that's, again, where people go wrong in this too. It's like, if you focus on things that would have changed things, who said to take the bubble top off? Well, we've discovered that. Okay. Who was the one who said to get rid of the motorcycles? So again, it might not even be that person. It would be the person above them that told them to go tell everybody this. So you go all the way up. And once you hit that ceiling, you have to say, who had the power to change that person? Who was the one who called that person? So you have to have military involved here. You have to have the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You have to have somebody above this to tell them, hey, this is what you're going to do. It wasn't some schmuck the night before who decided, hey, you know what? I'm sick of Kennedy's shit. We're just going to get off the car and I'm going to go tell the motorcycle drivers to hang back and we're going to see if anybody wants to take a shot. We're just going to see if that, we're going to give them the opportunity. That's ludicrous. It had to be a well-oiled machine. Not every gear knew about the other gear that was moving this machine. But you had one person pulling the lever. Okay? And that one person pulling the lever might have been surrounded by 10 other people who all had outlying tentacles to reach out and take care of this thing, to get the route changed, to have the building, who owns the building, the depository, who's the mayor of the town, who's the damn governor of the town. Who had the change in the motor pool? It wasn't just the motorcycles being moved and nobody being on the buildings and windows being open and the route being changed and the bubble top not being on and the Secret Service people not being on the rails and around the car. It was the fact that the news crew truck was moved from the front of the motorcade to the back. It was the fact that everybody sitting in the car was changed. There was an argument right before the motorcade took off between Connolly and LBJ and Kennedy and Youngblood, and the stuff that went on is insane. So you back up when you start going crazy. You go, who had the power to do this? Where did it trickle down start? Where did the trickle down start in this series? Where did the trickle down start over here? Who got Kennedy to go to Dallas in the first place when he didn't want to go? It was Connolly and LBJ. You have that from Jackie Kennedy saying it was the largest argument she ever heard. That happened, I believe, in a hotel, the El Camino or something like that in Fort Worth. The last time they were in Texas, you got to come back. You got to come back. They had to corner Kennedy and make him promise to come back to Dallas. They didn't need to go to Dallas again. So who had the power to do that? Wasn't some schmuck in the Secret Service detail. Some guy sitting in the break room decided he's had enough of Kennedy's bullshit. Because he didn't like him cheating on his wife, or he might be talking to Castro behind the closed doors or something. You see what I mean? He wouldn't have been able to do it all. He wouldn't have been able to make the police, the Dallas Police Department stand down. Okay. So you've got Roy H. Kellerman. Okay. He is an assistant. His location was in Dallas, Texas. He was in the presidential limousine front passenger seat. You had Emory Roberts. He was assistant special agent. Now, I'm with Vince on this. I think he's one of the ones that absolutely, he had suspicious behavior way before Dallas. So if you're looking into this, definitely dig into Emory Roberts. He was the assistant to the special agent in Chicago. His location was in Dallas. He was in the follow-up car. Now, he's the one that stood up and told Lawson to get down. He's the one that stood up and said, back down. He's also the one that told everybody to stand down when the president's getting shot. And he tells the Secret Service to stand down because he didn't want him to get run over by a car. Excuse me? Your job is to jump in front of a bullet in front of the president. Where are your questions? Plain and simple. That's your job. That literally is your job. Put your body in front of any projectile or any harm coming to that president and get the president out of harm's way. Period. Your life no longer, it's secondary. Maybe not even that. And that's not me saying that. That's the rules. That's part of it. That's the job. It's not whether you want to go out drinking the night before in some place called the Cellar. They were at Ruby's Club too. Okay, Lawson. Now he was in the lead car, and his role was a lead advance agent for the Dallas trip, responsible for coordinating the motorcycle route. Lawson. And the local law enforcement liaison, and he rode in the lead car ahead of the presidential limousine. And then you had Clint Hill, and he was the first lady's detail. He was assigned to Jackie. Okay, he was in the follow-up car, and he was the only one that did not listen to Emory's order to stand down and jumped on the back of the car, as we all famously know from the Zapruder film. Okay, now this is Joseph Rowley. He passed in 92. And he was in the head of the United States Secret Service from 61 to 73. This is the man that was on vacation. Okay, now, a couple other ones I wanted to mention here is Reddy, Kinney, and Hinckley. Landis is one that just came out with a book not too long ago, him and his son. And he said that he was the one who found the bullet and put it on the cot. That's what was in his book. A lot of people said that that's complete BS. Who knows at this point? The point is, it was more than one bullet. It was more than one gunshot. There was more than one shooter. Period. There just was. At this point, it doesn't matter who found the bullet and who put it where. The chain of custody in all of this evidence is absolute BS. So, if somebody wants to come out and write a book in the last, throes of their life, who am I to say they can't? If you want to buy it and believe all that, go ahead. But where the bullet was found, who found the bullet at this point is ridiculous, because there was no magic bullet that hit both Kennedy and Connolly, and how anybody could have believed that crap for any length of time is beyond me, because it just defies physics and common sense, and when common sense just plain up banged straight head on into cognitive dissonance. It just creates this kind of like, nuclear explosion. It doesn't make any sense. And how people just, okay. That's kind of like, okay, 3 buildings, 2 planes. Okay, toilets are absolutely, engine blocks are completely dust, but the passports are on top of and they survived. Okay. Magic bullet. Okay. It's nuts. At that point, it's almost like a nation is in shock and they just want some kind of answer they can hold on to so they can get on with their lives. But nobody really buys it. They just move on. I don't get it. Okay. Soros was also another one that was really distinctive in this. You'll hear a lot about him when you start digging around in this. Soros was the head of the Dallas field office, rode in the lead car with Lawson, coordinating with local law enforcement overseeing regional Secret Service operations. So again, just like in Butler, you'll hear, well, they didn't come to the meeting. We didn't have the meeting. We had the meeting 3 days before. A lot of these are set up a week ahead of time. That's pretty much standard. In this one, I believe Boring went, had it all set up, and then somebody else changed it last minute. If you listen to the interview with, oh God, what's his name? There's a couple that I've listened to where I'm just like, I don't know, like the James Files stuff. And, again, I'll say it. If I was in prison all that time, I could come up with a good story too. Not saying he did, not saying he didn't. But again, I've got at least 8, 9 people behind that damn picket fence, and not one of them is saying they saw the other one. So either I've got 9 people lying or 8 people lying and one person telling the truth. But who is? The only thing that I can say is, does that change anything? As far as I know, you could have 30 people behind the fence. The point remains, Oswald didn't do it. And there was a conspiracy to kill the president at 12:30 in the afternoon in Dallas, Texas. Who had the power? Who had the means? Who had the motive? Who could pull it off? Plain and simple. I don't care who hired the people behind the fence. You know what I mean? If they were hired behind the fence, if that was a professional hitman, the hitman doesn't even know who hired him or her. Right? So the point where you have to decide whether or not you believe James Files or not is up to the point where can James Files point the finger at the person who told him or hired him to do it? And do you believe that? And does that take you anywhere? Does that make sense to you? Because here's the thing, again, I'll say it again. I've said it on other episodes on this. The only reason I don't believe people that are still around today to say I'm the one who shot Kennedy, I did the shot, is because you're still alive. Because if you're talking, either you can be written off as completely bonkers and crazy and they can discredit you across the board so they're not worried about you anymore, or you had nothing to do with this. Because everybody else that had something to say that of substance is dead. Like this guy, he didn't even know what hit him. Heart attack, Camp David. 5 weeks before the Dallas hit. So you would have to look back and say, what date did Connolly and LBJ talk Kennedy into going to Dallas? When did he know? I think it was the beginning of October. It might have been the end of September. I don't know that date off the top of my head. But was it just before this happened? Because even his family, according to Vince, and he's the one who talked to him, said they were very suspicious. No toxicology report. He was in the ground 2 days after. Let me tell you something else. There was no ceremony for this man. Anybody else who was ever in service to the White House that passed got some type of a ceremony. Nothing. Barely a blip in the newspaper. Somebody was told to keep this quiet. Why? That makes it That highlights it. That makes it even more suspicious. This poor guy didn't know what hit him. Neither did Dorothy Kilgallen. I don't believe she accidentally overdosed. Not with the evidence that I've seen. Not to the people that I've talked to. And I believe that just taking that, like anybody that had a drinking problem or any kind of an overdose, any kind of an addict whatsoever, and just flippantly saying, well, they've had a past, so we're not going to look into this. Well, that's what they want you to do. So that would make me look into it even more, because that's too easy to say. And that everybody knows that. You know, one of the first things you see in the JFK movie is the, I forget her name, and I'm so sorry, I've forgotten her name, but she was running drugs for Ruby. And she was trying to tell everybody that they're going to kill Kennedy. These guys are serious guys. Somebody help. They're going to do this. And they wound up killing her. Threw her out of a car, overdosed her. You know, nobody listened to her because she was a drug addict. And this is what they count on. So, you know, I wouldn't be so quick to throw out everything. You know what I mean? Because that's why we've been trying to dig into this for 60 years, because people keep going, that's too crazy. Really? Hold on. Wait a minute. Let me hear that again. You know, put that on the shelf. Won't you take that out of the bin and put it there on the shelf, because that could be important sometime. I still think the meatloaf story is important, because it shows that there was more people pretending to be Secret Service people in Love Field. They were all over the damn place. And they saw the car at Parkland, and they saw the bullet hole in the windshield, and they saw the roses all over the place, and the nurses showing up with buckets, and then the car being taken off real quick. So there's more to it. Pieces, parts, all threads are important. Okay. Before we come out of this, this is a picture of the cellar. This is one of the bars that they went to drink that night. They went to Ruby's briefly, and then they went to the cellar, which is in Fort Worth. It's owned by this Cuban. I forget his name, but everybody here is connected into the Cuban resistance, the Cuban fair play for Cuba, all of this stuff went back and forth. But anyway, some of them lost their ID, some of them lost their guns. They're there to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. This goes against service protocol. Cliff was one of them, and you know, they're coming here with hangovers. They hired 2 fire department guys to guard the president that night while they went out drinking. They were never punished for this. They were never reprimanded for this. In fact, when asked, the head of the Secret Service said they've been punished enough. They lost their president. Really? The person you were guarding was killed. So, all right. And there's Cliff again. Yeah. I mean, Avery Roberts is definitely one of them. Yeah. I mean, this is just awful. Greer really not liking the way that this guy showed up. I mean, the car was basically going as fast as you backing out of a driveway. I agree with Vince that if they had done their job that day, this couldn't have been pulled off without some of them being involved in this, the Secret Service. And again, there's the bubble top. Debunking the myth. So I wanted to tell you a couple things that if Vince forgot to get it in there for you, he does a great job. He gets a lot in there. These are a few things that are in his books that kind of back up everything we just said. So in talking to Sam Kinney, Debunking the Myth, let me get that out of the way so I can read this top piece. Thank you guys for hanging in there with me. I thought this was a good way to kind of finish up on all this. So Debunking the Myth, Palamara cites firsthand accounts from numerous agents and aides who denied Kennedy ever ordered agents off the limousine or interfered with the protective duties, meaning the bubble top, the motorcade, the direction of the I've even heard that Kennedy changed he was the one that changed the direction of the route. There's nothing that backs that up. In fact, there's multiple things that discount that completely. And I think it's just another layer of disgusting rot that is involved in this on blaming Kennedy for his own death. Because to me, the betrayal is the worst thing here. Really, the cover up and just the way they're treating not just Kennedy but the American people. The whole thing stinks. But the betrayal of the people he trusted the most is what sickens me so bad. And their arrogance about it, the hubris, makes me nauseous. So Sam Kenney, follow-up car driver. That is absolutely positively false. No, no, no. He, Kennedy, had nothing to do with that. No, never. Arthur Godfrey, you might recognize the name. He spoke to him. That's a bunch of baloney. That's not true. Arthur Godfrey, very close to Kennedy. Jerry O'Rourke. Did President Kennedy order us off the steps of the limo? To my knowledge, President Kennedy never ordered us to leave the limo. Dave Powers, Kennedy aide in the motorcade, stated that agents never had to be told to get off the limousine. Other agents, including, hang on a second, can't see. Is it the chat? Dave Powers, Kennedy aide in the motorcade, stated that agents never had to be told to get off the limousine, a view endorsed by ARRB. Other agents, including Gerald Bean, Floyd Boring, Rufus Youngblood, that's a whole nother story with Rufus Youngblood, and John Norris, also confirmed Kennedy was cooperative and did not restrict their actions. And something else is stated that the Secret Service is really the only boss that the president has, because the Secret Service has to protect the president. And if the president says, I want to go out here and shake hands on this balcony, and the Secret Service says, no, it's not safe because we have word that there's, hostiles in the crowd or whatever, or we can't keep you safe from this up here, the president can't go out on the balcony. Plain and simple. They just pick up the president and go, and he has to listen. So you can't have it both ways, right? You have to understand how this hierarchy of control goes down, and to believe that Kennedy was the one who caused his death because of his actions. I think the only thing that he could be guilty of is trusting the Secret Service. You could get into hours of, Secret Service didn't like his lifestyle. They didn't like the things he was getting away with, how he was treating his wife and everything else. They were homebodies and they had families and all this. There was a lot going on with this whole Catholic, Protestant, Methodist, back and forth, and the Irish. And, they didn't like him because Catholic, and, he was going to go with what the Pope said and not what was best for the country. Just all this BS. Look, everybody was pissed at Kennedy. The oil people, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Khrushchev backdoor conversations, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all the generals thought he had no experience, that he was going to run us into a war, that he should be doing more to cause a war, that he should be involved more in the Vietnam War. They wanted their money, they wanted their war, they wanted their helicopters and their oil, and just the whole thing. And here's Kennedy. Well, again, we just spent hours, and this will be probably 24 hours of Kennedy that I've done over the whole series so far. 24 hours of Kennedy. And the one thing I can tell you for sure is this, that you had to have some cooperation from the Secret Service to pull this off. Who gave them that order? Had to be somebody very powerful. You couldn't have done it without the military connection. Who else would have the power to call off the National Guard on those buildings? Who called off the Dallas Police Department, the Sheriff's Department? Who, I could go all day. All the threads are important. We have to keep them all in the picture, or you're going to get a very fuzzy picture. We've had a very fuzzy picture for 60 years. It's starting to clear up. I believe personally, again, that LBJ was deeply involved up to his jumbo in this. And so did everybody in Dallas. You ask anybody on the ground in Dallas, they would have told you, because they knew of him. Now, outside of Dallas, outside of Texas, maybe a little bit different. You had to get people who knew LBJ, what he was really like, not what he showed the public. When you start digging into these people, that you get this sense of Camelot, this, the pictures that I'm showing you, and Kennedy's life and him in Hyannisport and on the sailboat, and Jackie and her impeccably dressed self and her pearls, or all of that. When you dig back in these layers, these people are just like you and me. And they trusted, they loved, they hated, they fought, they had kids, they missed important dates in between, they put up with crap that you think that you wouldn't put up with. We're not them, but one thing we can find out is that they were just as miserable as we are. All that money and all of the, whatever you want to call it, a curse, these people, it just seems it's just constant. I mean, from the father all the way down to Ted and his Chappaquiddick self, the alcoholism and the just all of it. They're miserable. I mean, they might look happy on their sailboats, but my God. And you start digging into the Rat Pack, and you start digging into all the connections, and the Peter Lawfords and the Marilyn Monroes and the Herbert Hoovers and the blackmail and the Bobby Bakers and all the killings and the suicides by, shoot yourself in the back 5 times with a bolt action rifle. That really happened. It's just a nasty cesspool of lies and deceit and greed and power and corruption. And it's just nasty. So why do we dig through it? We dig through it so we can bring it to the surface. We can recognize it when it's happening today, because newsflash, it's happening today. And that's why I brought up with Vince too about Lincoln. There's so many parallels there. And I mean, even blaming him for his own, well, that was Lincoln. We couldn't keep him, he had to be in the public. How much of that is true? Are you going to recognize it next time it comes around and you hear it again, where they're posting off the same lies, the same playbook? All right. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. I could show you a couple videos. I think we've pretty much done the Secret Service here. I could go a little bit deeper, but it's really not going to prove anything that we don't have now. The big blasts now are the blame was not on Kennedy. Everybody came through and pretty much proved that, right? Through via Vince and all of his digging. We now know about the bubble top and all those things. Hey, Bobby, how you doing? We know about those things. We pretty much know who your suspects are. You've got your Emory Roberts and your Greer and your Boring had to be involved somehow in it. But then again, he could have made, the map and made the plans, and then somebody changed it behind him. So again, do we get nitpicky? Yeah, you do in certain areas, because you want the blame to go to where it belongs. But Greer, as far as I'm concerned, here all the way to the right, and this is Clint Hill on this side, the driver. I'm not believing that he was in parade mode and then he had to shift it and hit the brakes and go into the next. That son of a bitch turned around twice. He lied about it. I believe I believe, now this is my opinion now, that he turned around to make sure the president was dead, and then he took off. All of the other little things that you throw in there, what happened to the limo? Why did they take it? Well, you know why they took away the limo like they did. They were getting rid of evidence, plain and simple. You don't do that. You don't hose off a sloped roof before there's been an investigation at a crime scene either. We all know this. Of course it's wrong. It's all wrong. It should never happen. But here's the thing, folks. If everything had gone right in Dallas, what was scheduled right after that? A barbecue at the ranch owned by LBJ. And word has it that if he had lived through Dealey Plaza, he would have never made it off that ranch. And they were going to keep doing it till they got him. So, what's the moral of the story? How many times have people like this been taken out by the people that they trust the most, that are surrounding them? Right? How many times have we seen it through history? I think it's disgusting. You know, that one thing, I think a lot of people are looking at the back and to the left when I look at the Zapruder film. When I see his hands go up to his throat, he does this look like, I need help. And the people that are supposed to help him turn away. That moment, right before he gets hit again, to me is one of the saddest moments. The disrespect after, they lost his brain, the things they did to his body, the shooting at Tippett, whether it was to use his body because he looked like a body double, the 2 coffins. We did that last week, A Tale of 2 Coffins. I can't tell you what went down there. I can tell you that for some reason, JFK's body arrived like almost an hour before Kennedy and Bobby on the plane riding with the coffin. We went through all this last week. Why? Why 2 coffins? 2 separate coffins. Why 2? Why? How did they lose the brain? The president's brain? You lost the brain? What? Shenanigans went down, folks. Did Tippett get shot just so they could have a lookalike body? Something to mess with for parts, maybe? Was he in on it and they had to get rid of it with 2 birds, 1 stone? I don't know. But I know LBJ held that plane for a long time for no reason. That was apparent. But maybe there was a reason. Maybe he had to give them time to get that other body going. Get it? When was the last time you heard of a body being shot, the ambulance showing up, getting there before the actual police get there, and picking that body up and going? And it's a dead police officer and a crime scene. The police officer is dead on arrival. Dead. You're not going to save him by getting him to the hospital fast. This is why I don't believe this woman. What the hell is her name? I said that she talked to Tippett for 20 minutes. He was shot in the head. The back of his brain was blown out, exactly like Kennedy's. He wasn't saying nothing, folks. She didn't talk to anybody for 20 minutes. And just like behind the fence, no other witness saw her there. This is the weirdest case you're ever going to hear in your life. This rabbit hole is not only deep, it's got lots of back doors, lots of tunnels, lots of offshoots. Pardon my hot tea. So here's the thing. I could play a little bit more, but I think this is what we're going to do. For all my late night watchers and anybody that's still sticking with me, we've got some people over here on YouTube. We've got some people over here on Rumble. Listen, this is what we're going to do. Vince was such a wonderful show. I hate to mess it up by showing a couple of little videos. So I'm going to cut it here. We're going to put this on the playlist for the JFK. And I'm going to start. I think what we're going to do is I want to see a movie. And I thought it would be neat. And I don't know that I've ever seen this full movie. I remember seeing parts of it. And I'm going to give you hints. And those of you who guess it, throw it up in the chat. I know this is a delay, so I'm going to kind of try to talk slow. It came out in early 80s. I didn't see it in the theater because I was in the military. It's kind of fun. It's definitely a vampire. And it's got one of my favorite actors in it. And I think he's done a lot of great stuff. He was in The Twilight Zone. He was in multiple movies. Night Gallery was another one he was in. And I can remember there was another one. I can't remember what it was. Was it? Might have been Night Gallery, I'm thinking. But it's Roddy McDowall. And I believe he plays a host of a horror show, kind of like a creature feature. And something happens. You got some, nutty teenagers involved, I believe. And something happens where, yes, that's it, Lisa. And some real vampires get involved. That's all I remember about it. But I haven't seen this movie in like forever. I don't know that I've even seen the whole thing. So it'll kind of be a treat. And I found a good, clear version of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut this down. Give me about 15 minutes. I'm going to open up another channel for the Rumble. And if you'd like to stay with me tonight on a crazy, wacky Monday night and watch Fright Night with me, I think it might be worth some laughs. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you'd like to, I'm going to start it over there. If you are a follower, hey, Catherine, if you are a follower on Rumble, I don't know why you're showing me this. If you are a follower on Rumble, you will be able to see the movie. It's totally free. There's nothing behind a paywall. All you have to do is get over there on Rumble and follow me. It's just under Cisco. For those of mods out there, thank you so much for tonight, for helping out with all the links, for making people feel welcome in the chat. I appreciate it so much. But get over there on Rumble. We're going to watch Fright Night. It won't come up on this one. It'll come up on a whole nother channel. So get over there on Rumble and follow me. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Steve sent me over a little song, so I think I'm going to let that one take us out tonight. It is from our good friend Rusty Lillywhite, and it is called the Ballad of JFK, and it's actually pretty good. I think I have it here. Do I have it? I have to find it. I'm going to have to pull it up. Okay. So we'll take that out, and I'll get over there and load up Fright Night. So get your PJs and your popcorn. And I will meet you back over there. If I can find this. Where did it go? Oh, for Pete's sakes. There's so many songs up here. It's hard to find stuff fast. Oh, for Pete's sake. I know it's here. So what'd y'all think? Vince is something else, isn't he? He's a great guest. I want to have him back on again. 7 books. The one on Chicago is really good. Abraham, the Secret Service agent that was arrested basically for trying to stop the Chicago attempt on Kennedy. And he just got Abraham Bolden, that's his name. And he actually tried to stop it, had information on it, tried to speak out, and they framed him, put him in jail, and locked him up until he shut up. And the things that they have done in this case to shut people down. And that shows you that the people that were in charge in Dallas really were already getting going and knew what they wanted, and were going to get it by any means, even as far back as Chicago. So again, there we are. So a song for Kennedy, the Ballad of JFK from Rusty Lillywhite, and I'll see you on the other side for Fright Night. See you on the Rumbles. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks again, mods. You guys are terrific, and thank you for everybody participating in the chat. It was really good tonight. Thank you.
In a world of dreams where the bright light shone, there arose a man, he stood alone, with a voice of promise, a vision so grand. He stepped to the podium with hope in his hand. From Camelot's glow to the halls of power, he climbed the steep path in freedom's hour. But shadows were lurking so near. In the heart of the crowd whispered secrets of fear. Oh, JFK, you were the light, with courage born to ignite the night, the night. A dreamer's heart and the sound of the gun, and your legacy lives on. Though you're gone, you're not done. The 35th, a beacon so bright, with words that could stir, set the world alight. Ask not what your country can do for you. The man of the people, he saw the truth through. But fate would come knocking, so cruel and so cold. A day carved in history, a story untold. In Dallas he rode with the wind in his hair, unaware of the danger, the weight of despair. Oh, JFK, you were the light. nation held its breath, a gasp in the air. The tragedy struck, left everyone bare. Tears fell like rain, painting sidewalks with grief for a man who inspired a spark of belief. In the chaos of silence, a young soul was lost. We bury our dreams, paying the cost. Now years roll by, but we keep holding tight to words that can heal and dreams that ignite. From the ashes of sorrow we rise and we stand, for the hope that you brought will forever expand. So let's raise a glass in the name of the brave who fought for our freedom, the love that you gave. In the hearts of the people, your spirit will stay forever and always. The Valley of JFK, oh JFK, you were the light. With courage born to ignite the night, the night. A dreamer's heart in the sound of a gun. Your legacy lives on, though you're gone, you're not done. So here's to the words and the dreams that you spun in the hearts of the many. Your journey's not done. Forever you'll shine like a star in the fray, in the songs that we sing. It's the ballad of JFK.